It was one of those quiet Wednesday afternoons where everything felt just a little off. The house was too quiet, the walls too still, and the ticking of the old kitchen clock was louder than usual. My husband, Brandon, had flown out that morning for a 3-day work trip to Houston. These business trips weren't uncommon. His company often sent him across the country, and I was used to being home alone. Still, I never got used to the emptiness. I'd spend the first few hours cleaning the house and making sure everything was in order, but it always felt like something or someone was missing. That afternoon, a thunderstorm had just rolled in, catching everyone by surprise. The sky darkened quickly, heavy clouds hanging low like they were about to spill secrets. I had just curled up on the couch with a warm cup of tea when I heard a strange, low creak from the back of the house. It sounded like wood groaning under pressure, maybe from the wind. I set the cup down and cautiously walked to the laundry room, flipping on the light. The sound repeated, louder this time. I reached for the door to the backyard and realized the hinge had come loose. The storm had blown it off track, and it was flapping slightly every time the wind picked up. I tried tightening it, but I was never really good with tools. That was always Brandon's thing. I sighed, standing in the doorway, staring at the problem I couldn't fix. That's when I saw our neighbor, Jake, across the yard. He was pulling his trash cans back up to his garage, his hoodie already soaked from the rain. Jake and his wife, Melissa, had moved in about 2 years ago. She traveled often too, and I guess in that way, we both understood each other. Sometimes we'd exchange small talk over the fence or wave from across the driveway. They seemed like good people, especially Jake, always offering to help when he saw someone struggling with something around their home. I called out to him, raising my voice over the rain. "Hey, Jake. Sorry to bother you, but do you have a moment?" He looked up, shielding his eyes, and jogged over. "Hey, everything all right?" I stepped aside, so he could see the door. The wind knocked the hinge out. I was trying to fix it, but it's not budging. Jake gave the door a quick look, then smiled. "No worries, I've got my toolkit inside. Be right back." True to his word, Jake returned a few minutes later with a toolbox in one hand and an umbrella in the other. He knelt down and inspected the damage while I held the door steady. As he worked, we chatted about small things: the storm, Brandon's trip, Melissa's last business conference in Chicago. His tone was friendly and relaxed, like someone who didn't mind lending a hand just for the sake of being helpful. He had that calm energy that made people feel comfortable around him. "Got it," he said after a few minutes, tightening the last screw. "Should hold fine now." I smiled, genuinely grateful. "You're a lifesaver. Want to come in and dry off for a bit? I've got coffee or tea." He hesitated for a second, maybe out of politeness, then nodded. "Sure, thanks." I led him inside, handing him a towel from the hallway closet while I went to the kitchen. I poured him some coffee, and we sat in the living room, the storm still rumbling outside. The conversation flowed easily. Jake was surprisingly funny, in a dry and unexpected way. I found myself laughing more than I had in days. There was something comforting about sharing a warm space while the storm raged outside. As we talked, I realized I didn't know that much about him beyond surface-level neighbor stuff. He told me about his job in IT, how he worked mostly from home now. He said Melissa's constant travel schedule left him with a lot of quiet evenings, too. We laughed about how we'd both become part-time house managers, always fixing things or planning home projects to keep busy. "I actually admire how you handle everything," Jake said at one point, his tone more sincere. "It's not easy being the one holding down the fort." I smiled, touched. "It means a lot to hear that. Sometimes it feels like the house just swallows the silence." He nodded. "I know exactly what you mean." The rain poured harder, thunder cracking close enough to make the windows tremble slightly. We both looked toward the window, then back at each other. It wasn't uncomfortable, but something shifted in the air, like the moment had deepened. I stood up and offered to heat up some leftover pasta from lunch, and he accepted. We ate at the counter, still chatting but a little quieter now. By the time the storm died down, it was nearly 6 p.m. Jake stood to leave, thanking me again for the coffee and food. As he reached for the doorknob, he turned slightly. "If anything else breaks or you need anything, Don't hesitate, okay? Seriously. I nodded. Thanks, Jake. That means a lot. After he left, the house felt even quieter than before. But now it wasn't just the absence of Brandon I noticed. It was the presence Jake had briefly filled. That night, I curled into bed with a weird mix of thoughts. Not inappropriate, but reflective. I realized how isolated I had become over the years during Brandon's trips. The long hours, the quiet dinners, the one-sided conversations with the TV. Jake had just been kind, a good neighbor. But his visit reminded me of what simple companionship could feel like. The next day, the sky was bright, and the storm had moved on. I opened the blinds and went about cleaning up the yard. Jake was outside too, watering the garden. We exchanged a wave, but this time it lingered a little longer. Over the next few days, we settled into a rhythm. Jake would check in occasionally, asking if everything was all right. I'd sometimes walk over to his side of the fence to drop off banana bread or cookies I had baked. It wasn't anything more than neighborly kindness, but it warmed something inside me. When Brandon returned from Houston, things went back to their usual routine. He unpacked, caught up on work calls, and by the second evening back, he was already focused on his laptop again. I didn't tell him about Jake fixing the door. Not because it was a secret, but because it just didn't seem like something Brandon would be interested in hearing. He never really liked talking about house stuff, and even when he did, it was always in passing. A week later, I got a flat tire while driving back from the grocery store. I managed to pull into the driveway, frustrated and unsure what to do. Brandon was on another call and waved me off when I tried to explain. So, I did something I normally wouldn't. I called Jake. He came over within minutes and changed the tire quickly, without making me feel like I was helpless. That evening, I sat on the porch alone, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Jake walked by on his way back from the mailbox and gave me a small wave. I raised my glass to him, smiling. He smiled back and kept walking. It wasn't romantic or even suggestive. It was just the quiet acknowledgement of two people who understood something about each other that maybe others didn't. Life kept moving. Brandon kept traveling. Melissa returned from her trips. The rhythm of our neighborhood continued, with barbecues, weekend lawn mowing, and the occasional snowstorm. But from that moment on, every time I heard thunder in the distance or noticed something broken around the house, I remembered that one afternoon. Not because it was dramatic or life-changing, but because it showed me how much simple kindness could change a person's day.